Chapter 1. The Guardian's Threshold. When the storm drove her to his door, she didn't know she was coming home. The rain came down like divine punishment, each drop a needle against Alara's skin as she stumbled through the iron gates. She shouldn't have been here, shouldn't have left the main road, shouldn't have trusted the crumbling map she'd found in that provincial library. But the alternative was worse, returning to Oxford, to the committee that had called her research obsessive fabrication, to the colleagues who whispered breakdown when they thought she couldn't hear. The castle rose before her like an accusation in stone. Thornwood Keep, her notes had called it. Abandoned for 2 centuries, local legend said, though the grounds were strangely maintained, the path clear of debris, the gates merely rusted, not collapsed. Lightning split the sky, illuminating pointed turrets and narrow windows that watched her approach with the patience of a predator. Her boots squelched in mud as she reached the massive oak doors. Locked, certainly. She'd find an outbuilding, wait out the storm, continue her solitary research in the morning. The dissertation committee could burn for all she cared. She had been right about the medieval blood cults, right about the documented disappearances, right about... The door opened. Alara froze, rain streaming down her face. No hand had turned the handle. No creak of hinges had announced the movement. The entrance simply gaped before her, revealing a hallway lined with candelabras that bloomed with flame as she watched, one after another, as if welcoming her inside. "This is how people die in Gothic novels," she muttered, but cold and exhaustion made the decision. She stepped across the threshold. The door closed behind her with a soft click that might as well have been a coffin lid. "You're far from any marked path." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Smooth, cultured, touched with an accent she couldn't place. Old money, old world, just old Alara spun, water flying from her soaked coat. The hallway stretched empty before her, portraits of stern-faced nobility watching from the walls. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. The storm, I'll leave at first light. You misunderstand." A shadow detached from shadow. He stood at the far end of the hall, perfectly still in a way that human bodies never managed. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in clothes that belonged in a museum, or a period film with an extraordinary budget. "I'm not asking you to leave." Something in his phrasing made her skin prickle. Not "I'm not sending you away," not "you may stay." The distinction felt important. He moved closer, and Alara's researcher's brain catalogued details automatically. Too pale, too graceful, eyes that caught the candlelight like a cat's. When he stopped 3 paces away, she realized she couldn't hear him breathing. "You're looking for something." It wasn't a question. His gaze dropped to the leather satchel she clutched against her chest. Her research, her proof, her obsession carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. The Thornwood Pact. Alara's breath caught. She'd found only fragments, scattered references in monastery records and parish registries. Most historians denied it had ever existed. "How do you—" "Because I was there when it was signed." He smiled, and it was almost gentle. Almost human. 300 years ago in this very hall. Your ancestors' blood still stains the stones beneath your feet. She should run. Every instinct screamed it. But Alara had spent 5 years chasing ghosts through archives, had sacrificed her reputation and her career for a truth no one else could see, and here it stood before her, wearing a man's face and a killer's stillness. "What are you?" Her voice steadied as her mind engaged, fear transmuting into the sharp focus of discovery. "The question you should ask," he said softly, "is what you are, and why, after 3 centuries of silence, the Pact's heir has finally returned to Thornwood Keep." He extended one pale hand, palm up. "My name is Dominic Ashford. I have been waiting a very long time for you. Alara Thorne." The sound of her full name, the one she'd hidden behind her mother's maiden name at Oxford, froze her blood more thoroughly than his unnatural stillness. Thunder crashed overhead. Somewhere in the depths of the castle, something that might have been wind sounded like weeping. "The storm will last for hours," Dominic said, his hand still extended. "You'll catch your death if you leave now. Stay. Let me show you what your family forgot." Alara looked at his offered hand, at the Gothic grandeur surrounding her, at the doors that had opened without touch. She thought of her empty flat in Oxford, her revoked library privileges, the colleagues who had called her mad. Then she thought of the truth she'd chased into exile. She placed her hand in his. His skin was cool as marble, gentle as a promise. "Show me everything," she said. His smile widened, revealing just the hint of something sharp. "As you wish." Chapter 2. The Library of Shadows in the House of Secrets. Knowledge has teeth. The castle interior defied architectural logic. Hallways branched at impossible angles, staircases spiraled upward and downward simultaneously, and everywhere, candles burned in wall sconces that bore no trace of wax drippings. Alara's historian's mind catalogued the inconsistencies, even as her survival instincts screamed, warnings she chose to ignore. Dominic led her through the labyrinth with the confidence of someone who'd walked these paths for lifetimes. His coat never rustled. His boots made no sound on the stone floors. She found herself measuring her own breath against his silence, confirming what she already knew, but couldn't yet speak aloud. "You're shivering," he observed without turning. "This way." He ushered her into a parlor that belonged in Versailles, all gilt mirrors and crimson velvet, a fire already crackling in the hearth despite the room's obvious disuse. Dust should have coated every surface. Instead, everything gleamed as if maintained by invisible hands. "There's a bedroom prepared upstairs," Dominic said, gesturing to a door she hadn't noticed. "Dry clothes in the wardrobe, they should fit adequately." "I'll have refreshments brought." "Brought by whom?" Alara asked. "I haven't seen any servants." His smile was cryptic. "This house provides what I require." Before she could question that unsettling statement, he was gone, not walked away, simply absent, as if he'd been edited from the frame. Alara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her hands trembled as she opened the side door. The bedroom beyond was mercifully normal. A 4-poster bed with embroidered linens, an ornate wardrobe, a vanity with a silver-backed brush set. The wardrobe did indeed contain clothes, a white cotton nightgown, a burgundy velvet dress that looked Victorian, stockings and slippers. Everything in precisely her size. She changed quickly, her researcher's curiosity warring with mounting dread. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her waist and falling in elegant folds to her ankles. When she caught her reflection in the vanity mirror, she looked like she'd stepped from a pre-Raphaelite painting, all dark hair and pale skin against crimson fabric. "Your ancestors?" "Blood still stains the stones," she returned. To the parlor to find a tea, service laid out on a side table. Delicate china cups, a pot that steamed with some fragrant blend, small cakes arranged on a silver platter. No one had entered. The door hadn't opened, yet there it sat, precisely prepared. "Victorian Darjeeling." Dominic's voice came from the doorway. "I remembered you preferred it." Alara turned sharply. "We've never met, haven't we?" He moved to the fireplace with that unnatural grace, gazing into the flames. "Your dissertation, Blood Ritual and Social Contract in Medieval England, was quite thorough. You came closer to the truth than any scholar in 2 centuries? You've read my work?" The tea forgotten, Alara crossed the room. "How?" "It was rejected by every journal, dismissed by the review board." "I read it the night you submitted it." He finally met her eyes, and in the firelight, she could see they weren't brown as she'd first thought, but a deep crimson that shifted like rubies underwater. "I've been watching you for 3 years, Alara Thorne, waiting to see if you would follow the breadcrumbs to their source." The admission should have terrified her. Instead, a strange thrill shot through her chest. Validation, finally, after years of mockery. "Then you know about the disappearances. The pattern of exsanguination deaths every 50 years. The families that vanished from parish records after signing witnessed contracts. The Thornwood Pact." Dominic turned fully toward her. "A blood oath between the Thorne family and House Ashford, signed in 1725. Your 4 times great-grandmother, Catherine Thorne, pledged her line's protection in exchange for our intervention during the Jacobite Rising. The terms were specific. 1 heir per generation would serve as keeper of our history, guardian of our secrets. In return, we would never hunt her bloodline, and we would defend Thorne descendants from rival houses." Alara's pulse hammered. "Rival houses? You mean there are others like you?" I mean, there are vampires, yes. He said it matter-of-factly, the way one might discuss the weather. And I am one. I assume you've deduced as much. The word hung between them, forbidden and electric. Ilara had written entire chapters on vampire folklore, had analyzed the medical theories behind blood-drinking cults. But theory and reality were violently different things. Why was the pact forgotten? She asked, forcing her voice steady. It wasn't forgotten. It was hidden. Dominic moved closer, his expression darkening. In 1823, Catherine's great-granddaughter married a mortal who discovered the pact's terms. He attempted to break the agreement, to expose House Ashford to the church authorities. We had no choice but to intervene. The family scattered. The documents were destroyed, all except one copy, sealed in this castle. Your branch of the Thorns adopted your grandmother's surname, buried the history, until I started digging up the past. Ilara's mind raced. And now? Now you're here, which means the pact reactivates, and rival houses, specifically House Mordraine, will know it. They've been searching for the pact's heir for decades. Why? What power does this agreement hold? Dominic's expression turned grim. The Thornwood Pact isn't merely a protection contract. It's a binding oath that limits vampire sovereignty over this region. As long as a Thorn heir lives under our protection, the treaty holds. But if House Mordraine claims you, through death or conversion, they can shatter the pact and expand their hunting grounds across England. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled against ancient stones. So I'm a target, Ilara said slowly. You've been a target since birth. Dominic's voice gentled. But you're also under my protection now. The moment you crossed this threshold, the pact's magic recognized you. You're safe here, and outside these walls? His silence was answer enough. Ilara looked at the tea, at the impossible room, at the vampire who'd been watching her for years. Show me the documents. I want to see the original pact. Dominic studied her for a long moment, and something like respect flickered across his features. Follow me to the library. But know this, Ilara. Once you read those words, once you understand the full terms, there's no unknowing. Your life as you planned it ends tonight. She thought of Oxford, of the career she'd lost, of the isolation that had driven her into storms and ruins. That life ended the moment the review board called me mad, she said. Show me the truth. He inclined his head. As you wish. The library doors opened ahead of them, and Ilara stepped into her destiny. Chapter 3. The Crimson Veil truth has a price, and it's paid in blood. The library stole Ilara's breath. It was a cathedral of knowledge. 3 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves connected by wrought iron spiral staircases, a domed ceiling painted with celestial maps, and reading tables that stretched like altars beneath chandeliers of crystal and candlelight. The air smelled of leather and aged paper, that particular perfume that had always felt more like home than any house. Every book written on vampire lore, blood magic and supernatural contracts, Dominic said, watching her reaction. Centuries of collection. Much of it predates Gutenberg. Ilara moved as if entranced, trailing fingers along spines embossed with Latin, Greek, languages she didn't recognize. This is extraordinary. These should be in museums, archives. They should be ash, he corrected. Most were stolen from burning pyres. Church inquisitions, witch hunts, purges, knowledge preserved by monsters because humanity feared its own shadow. She turned to face him. Is that what you are? Monsters? We're predators who learn to negotiate. He moved to a central table where a single volume rested on a velvet cushion. Black leather binding, silver clasps, pages edged in gold leaf. The Thornwood Pact, penned in blood by your ancestor and my father. Ilara approached reverently. The book radiated age, that particular weight of significant objects. Dominic unclasped it carefully, opening to a page covered in elegant script. The ink was rust-colored. Not ink. On this winter solstice, 1725, witnessed by moon and mortal authority, Catherine Thorne of Lancashire binds her blood and her line to House Ashford in perpetual covenant, Ilara read aloud. Her voice steadied as academic focus overtook emotion. Terms thus: 1 heir per generation shall serve as keeper of secrets, granted protection from all vampire houses in exchange for... She stopped, eyes widening. voluntary sustenance when freely offered. The silence stretched. Catherine didn't just protect vampire secrets, Alara said slowly. She fed them. She offered blood willingly on her terms when she chose. Dominic's voice was carefully neutral. Consent is the cornerstone of the pact. Without it, the magic breaks. That's why my kind values it, not morality, but necessity. Blood taken by force carries consequences. Alara's mind raced through implications. So the pact didn't just protect Thorns from being hunted, it established a feeding relationship. A partnership, he corrected. Catherine gained wealth, security, political influence. House Ashford gained a reliable source during an era when exposure meant extinction. Both sides benefited, until glass shattered above them. Dominic moved so fast he blurred, positioning himself between Alara and the library's upper gallery. 3 figures materialized from shadows she'd swear had been empty seconds before. 2 men and a woman, all inhumanly beautiful, all radiating predatory menace. Dominic Ashford. The woman descended the spiral staircase with liquid grace, her voice like poisoned honey, still playing guardian to doomed bloodlines. How nostalgic. Celeste Mordrain. Dominic's tone could have frozen fire. Leave. Now. She's under protection of the pact. The pact? Celeste laughed, and it sounded like breaking bones. That antiquated treaty? My house doesn't recognize agreements made before the New World existed. We certainly don't respect your little protection racket. Her companions fanned out, circling. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed run, but Dominic stood like a stone wall before her, radiating coiled violence. The Conclave recognizes the pact, Dominic said. Touch her, and you declare war on every house that values treaty law. The Conclave is old men clinging to old ways. Celeste tilted her head, studying Alara like prey. And this little scholar, do you even understand what you carry, girl? What secrets pulse in that pretty throat? I understand you're threatening me, Alara managed, forcing strength into her voice. And that suggests you're afraid of something I might do. Celeste's smile showed too many teeth. Clever. Yes, your blood could break the pact's binding. If we turn you, your will becomes Mordrain's, and the treaty's power transfers to us. Every hunting ground Ashford controls becomes ours. England, Scotland, half of Europe. You'd shatter centuries of balance for territory. Dominic's hands had become claws, nails lengthening to points. We'd shatter it for dominion. Celeste's eyes gleamed red. The pact limits us, Ashford. Makes us weak. Transforms hunters into negotiators. But if the last Thorn heir becomes one of us, she gestured elegantly. Well, the magic has no choice but to adapt. The magic will destroy you first, Dominic growled. Forced conversion violates every clause. Catherine's bloodline curse ensures Catherine's dead. Celeste moved impossibly fast. And dead women's promises mean nothing, she lunged. Dominic met her mid-strike, 2 predators colliding with inhuman force. They moved too quickly for Alara to follow, a blur of violence that crashed through reading tables and sent books flying. The male vampires advanced on her from opposite sides. Alara grabbed the first weapon she found, a silver letter opener from the table. Ridiculous against supernatural creatures, but her hands needed occupation. Stay back! Oh, she has spirit, the closer vampire purred. Mordrain will enjoy breaking. Dominic materialized behind him, moving through space like it was suggestion rather than law. His hand closed around the vampire's throat. No one. Touches. The air. The sickening sound of tearing flesh. The vampire crumbled to ash. Alara's scream caught in her throat. One moment a being stood there. The next, nothing but dust settling on priceless manuscripts. The second male vampire hissed and retreated. Celeste disengaged from Dominic, wiping black blood from her mouth. 3 claw marks scored her pale cheek. This isn't over, Ashford, she said. The Thorn girl is already dead. She just doesn't know it yet. Her gaze fixed on Alara. Enjoy his protection while it lasts, little scholar. We'll be waiting the moment you step outside these walls. Then they were gone. Not through doors or windows. Simply absent, leaving only ash and broken furniture as evidence of their presence. Alara's legs gave out. She sat hard on the floor, the letter opener clattering from numb fingers. Dominic was beside her instantly, not touching but close enough that his coolness radiated against her skin. "Are you hurt?" His voice was soft, but she could hear the predator still lurking beneath. "You killed him." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Just dust. He would have killed you. Or worse." Dominic's jaw tightened. "House Mordrain doesn't make idle threats, Alara. You're in genuine danger now." "Now?" Hysterical laughter bubbled up. "As opposed to 5 minutes ago when I learned vampires are real and I'm some kind of supernatural bargaining chip." He didn't smile. "As opposed to when you were merely hunted. Now you're declared prey. Every Mordrain vampire will be searching for you." Alara forced herself to breathe, to think. "Then teach me. The pact, the magic, how to defend myself. I didn't survive academic exile to die in a Gothic horror novel." Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Respect. "You want to stay? After everything you've seen?" She looked at the ash on the floor, at the shattered glass glittering like diamonds, at the ancient book still open on its velvet cushion, her ancestors' blood-written promise. "I want the truth," she said. "All of it." Chapter 4. Blood and Binding, the safest cage is the one you choose. The attack came at dawn. Alara woke to the sound of windows shattering throughout the castle. Dominic's voice shouting commands in languages she didn't know. She bolted from the bedroom, his bedroom, where he'd insisted she sleep after the library confrontation, wearing only the borrowed nightgown. The hallway glowed red with pre-dawn light filtering through stained glass, and that glow illuminated 7 figures advancing through smoke that smelled of sulfur and burning sage. House Mordrain had brought reinforcements. "Get to the vault." Dominic appeared beside her, his face transformed, eyes fully crimson, fangs extended, something ancient and terrible looking out from behind his civilized veneer. "East Wing, through the portrait gallery, behind the painting of the Winter Queen. Code is your birth date, go. I'm not leaving you, you are the objective." He shoved her, not roughly, but with enough force to propel her down the corridor. "If they take you, the pact dies. Run." A vampire materialized behind him. Dominic spun, caught the creature mid-lunge, and drove it into the stone wall hard enough to crack mortar. Black blood sprayed. Alara ran. The castle was a maze, but panic sharpened her memory. She'd spent hours after the library attack studying the architectural diagrams Dominic had provided. Exits, safe rooms, warding barriers. The portrait gallery stretched ahead, lit by guttering candles that cast dancing shadows. She found the Winter Queen easily, a pale woman crowned with icicles, holding a crystal orb that seemed to glow with internal light. Behind it, a door. Electronic keypad, jarring anachronism in the Gothic setting. Alara's fingers shook as she entered the numbers. 11:03, 1996. The lock clicked. She stumbled into darkness, pulling the portrait closed behind her. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing a modern panic room disguised as a medieval vault. Steel-reinforced walls, monitors showing security feeds, shelves stocked with supplies. On the largest screen, she watched Dominic fight 3 vampires simultaneously in the entrance hall. He moved like violence made poetry, but he was outnumbered. One attacker raked claws across his chest, tearing through fabric and flesh. Black blood bloomed. Alara's hands found a radio on the console. "Dominic, you're injured!" His voice crackled through static. "Stay. There. The vault's warded. They can't enter." A pause filled with the sounds of combat. "Alara, there's a drawer marked emergency protocols." Red folder. "Read it." She found the drawer, the folder. Inside, official-looking documents covered in legal jargon and sigils she recognized from the pact. But one page made her blood freeze. In the event of siege by hostile house, the Keeper may invoke Clause 7, voluntary sustenance in extremis. Guardian is authorized to feed from willing Keeper to restore combat effectiveness. Keeper maintains autonomy. Consent must be explicit and freely given. "You want me to let you drink from me?" Alara breathed into the radio. On screen, Dominic took a blow that sent him crashing through a banister. He rose slowly, clearly weakened. "Only if you choose. But I'm injured, outnumbered. Your blood would heal me, strengthen me enough to do it." The words left her mouth before fear could silence them. If I stay here and you die, they'll just wait me out. But if you win, we both survive. Alara, you said consent is sacred. I'm consenting. Come to the vault, Silence. Then, unlock the door. And understand, once I taste your blood, the pact's magic will recognize our bond permanently. You'll be bound to House Ashford in ways Catherine never imagined. Her hand hovered over the keypad. On screen, 2 more vampires entered the hall. Dominic was backing toward the east wing, leaving a trail of black blood. Alara opened the door. He materialized from the shadows, moving fast but controlled. His shirt hung in tatters, revealing 4 deep claw marks across his ribs. Black blood, darker than human, viscous like oil, dripped steadily. But his eyes, when they met hers, were still cognizant. Still him. Last chance to refuse, he said hoarsely. I would never force. I know. Alara extended her wrist, grateful that her voice remained steady even as her heart tried to escape her chest. But we're partners in this pact, right? So let me help you. Something profound flickered across his features. He took her hand with extraordinary gentleness, cradling her wrist as if it were spun glass. It will hurt, he warned, but I'll make it as brief as possible. Just do it before I lose my nerve. He pressed her wrist to his lips. A kiss, almost chaste. Then his fangs pierced skin. The pain was sharp and bright, but it faded quickly into something stranger. A pulling sensation, warmth spreading up her arm, and beneath it all, an awareness of him. His relief as strength returned, his guilt at taking from her, his desperate need to protect. It wasn't telepathy, more like emotional synesthesia, feelings rendered as colors she could almost taste. Dominic pulled back after seconds that felt like hours. His wounds were already closing, flesh knitting together with supernatural speed. He sealed her wrist with his tongue, the punctures closing instantly, leaving only 2 small marks like a snake bite. Thank you, he whispered, and there was something worshipful in his tone that made her shiver. Will it always feel like that? Alara asked. Like I could feel your thoughts? The pact's magic recognizes us now. We're bound. His thumb traced the marks on her wrist. I'll always know if you're in danger, and you'll always sense when I'm near. A crash from the monitors. The vault door shuddered. They've breached the east wing, Dominic said, rising. But I'm strong enough now to finish this. He met her eyes. Stay here. Lock the door. No matter what you hear, don't open it until I return. Dominic. He cupped her face with one cool hand. You trusted me with your blood, Alara Thorne. Trust me with your safety. Then he was gone, moving with renewed speed. Alara watched the monitors as he became a whirlwind of violence in the hallways. Faster, stronger, utterly lethal. The Mordrain vampires fell back, unprepared for his restored power. Within minutes, they retreated through the shattered windows, leaving 3 piles of ash and the reek of burning flesh. Dominic returned to the vault covered in black blood. Some his, most not. He looked simultaneously triumphant and exhausted. They'll return with more, he said. We need to leave Thornwood. Find sanctuary with allies. Where? Alara asked, still feeling the echo of his presence in her veins. House Armitage, Scotland. They owe me a blood debt. He extended his hand. Pack light. We leave at dusk. She took his hand, feeling the bond pulse between them like a second heartbeat. Together, she said. Together, he agreed. Chapter 5. Sanctuary's edge in hiding. Truths surface like bruises. The safe house was a cottage on the Scottish coast. Stone and thatch, surrounded by salt marshes that glowed silver under the waning moon. Dominic had transported them in a blacked-out car driven by a day-walking human servant named Thomas, who asked no questions and disappeared after delivering supplies. Now Alara sat by a peat fire, wrapped in wool blankets, watching Dominic pace the small space with predatory restlessness. We can stay 3 days, he said, checking his phone for the dozenth time. Then we move to House Armitage's estate in the Highlands. Celeste won't risk attacking under their protection. Why do they owe you? Alara asked. She'd been cataloging questions during the silent 5-hour drive, organizing them like research notes. Dominic stopped pacing. I prevented their slaughter during the vampire purges of 1892. Hid their youngest members in Thornwood's catacombs for 2 years. Victoria Armitage doesn't forget debts. 1892. Ilara tested the date. You would have been 167. He said it matter-of-factly. I was turned during the French Revolution, walked to the guillotine and woke up immortal, courtesy of my sire's intervention. The casual mention of centuries made her head spin. What's it like? Living that long? He resumed pacing, but slower. Lonely. Humans age and die. Vampires betray each other for territory or ancient grudges. You learn to keep distance, to avoid attachment. His eyes found hers. Until you meet someone who makes distance impossible. Heat crept up her neck. The bond between them hummed constantly now. She could feel him even in adjacent rooms, his presence like warm pressure against her consciousness. It should have been invasive. Instead, it felt like finding a missing piece. Tell me about Catherine, she said, deflecting. My ancestor. What was she like? Dominic smiled, the expression softening his angular features. Brilliant, sharp-tongued. She negotiated the pact's terms herself, refused my father's first 3 offers. Demanded protection not just for herself but for 5 generations, specified exactly when and how blood could be taken. He settled into the chair opposite her. She wasn't afraid of us. That's what made the partnership work. Were you... Ilara hesitated. Were you lovers? No. Catherine loved her husband, stayed faithful until his death. But we were friends, genuine friends. She'd spend hours in Thornwood's library, teaching me about the changing world beyond our gates. When she grew old, she made me promise to watch over her descendants. His voice roughened. I failed. When her great-granddaughter's husband tried to break the pact, I acted to protect the treaty. But the family scattered and I lost track of the bloodline for decades. Until you found me, Ilara said softly. Until you found yourself. Dominic leaned forward, firelight casting shadows across his face. Your dissertation was extraordinary, Ilara. You pieced together fragments that historians had dismissed for centuries. You saw patterns in parish records, analyzed blood cult rituals with academic rigor. You walked right up to the truth and refused to look away, even when it cost you everything. It cost me a career, she corrected bitterly. Credibility, respect. It cost you their world. His intensity pinned her. But you gained this one. Questions for you now. Do you regret crossing Thornwood's threshold? Knowing what you know? Ilara considered lying, offering the expected response. But the bond made deception feel wrong. No, I regret the fear, the violence, but not the truth. Never the truth, even though the truth includes monsters, especially because it includes you. The words slipped out before she could stop them. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Something less human, more predatory. She pulled the blanket tighter. But you protected me, respected my choices, honored consent. You're more honorable than most of the academics who destroyed my reputation. Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. I was a monster once. In the early years, before I learned control, I hurt people, Ilara. Fed without thought for the lives I damaged. It took Catherine's friendship to teach me another way. That partnership could replace predation. What changed you? She asked me what I wanted from eternity. He stared into the fire, and I realized I'd never considered the question. I'd been surviving, existing, not living. She showed me that immortality without purpose is just a longer death. The peat shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, wind howled across the marshes. Tell me about your life before, Dominic said quietly. Before Oxford, before the obsession. Who was Ilara Thorne when she was just a girl? No one had asked her that in years. Lonely, she admitted. My parents died in a car crash when I was 8. I bounced between relatives who didn't want me, buried myself in books because fictional worlds were kinder than real ones. History became my refuge. The past couldn't reject me, couldn't call me too intense or obsessed. She laughed without humor. Turns out I was obsessed, just with the right thing. You were looking for family. Dominic's insight cut clean. The Thornwood Pact was your inheritance, even if you didn't know it. Blood calling to blood. Is that why it feels... She gestured vaguely at the space between them. Why I'm not more terrified. The bond? Partly. He rose, moved closer, but didn't sit. But also because you're Catherine's heir in more than blood. You have her courage, her curiosity, her refusal to accept easy answers. Alara stood, blanket falling away. They were inches apart, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his crimson eyes. What happens if we can't stop Mordrain? If they turn me? They won't. The vow was absolute. I'll burn every vampire house in Europe before I let them touch you. That's not sustainable protection. Then we make a new pact. His hand rose, hovering near her face. One that gives you agency, power. You're not just an heir, Alara. You're brilliant, strategic. Together, we could rewrite the treaties, force the Conclave to acknowledge stronger protections for humans in our world. You'd risk war with other houses for that? I'd risk anything for you. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to name. Alara's pulse hammered. The bond thrummed. Then her stomach growled, absurdly loud. Dominic blinked, and laughter broke the tension. When did you last eat? Yesterday? This morning? Time's gotten strange. He moved to the kitchenette, rummaging through Thomas's supplies. I'll make you something. And tomorrow we plan. Real strategy. How to use the pact's magic as a weapon instead of a leash. Alara watched him work, this ancient vampire heating soup for her with domestic care. Dominic? Thank you. For all of this. He glanced back, expression unguarded. No, thank you for trusting me with your blood, your safety. Your truth. Outside, the marsh mist rose like veils. Inside, warmth kindled. Chapter 6. The Keeper's gambit power sleeps in forgotten words. The attack came not at the safe house, but on the road to House Armitage. Alara was reviewing the pact's documents in the car's back seat. Dominic had brought copies from Thornwood's vault, when Thomas suddenly swore and swerved. 3 vehicles blocked the narrow Highland road ahead, and figures emerged from the surrounding pine forest. Mordrain vampires, at least a dozen. They tracked us, Dominic said, deadly calm. Thomas, when I give the signal, drive through their blockade. Don't stop. Sir, that's an order. Dominic turned to Alara. Whatever happens, stay in the car. The steel frame is reinforced with silver. They can't breach it easily. You're going out there alone. Alara's heart hammered. I'm buying you time to reach Armitage territory. It's 3 miles north. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Trust the bond. If I fall, you'll know. Run. Before she could protest, he was gone, door open, moving like smoke into the twilight. The battle was immediate and brutal. Alara watched through the windshield as Dominic met the first wave with controlled violence, his movements efficient and lethal. But there were too many. They swarmed him, pulling him down through sheer numbers. Thomas gunned the engine. The car lurched forward, smashing through the blockade's edge. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. Behind them, vampires pursued. Miss Thorne, Thomas said urgently. In the glove box. Silver dagger, vial of clear liquid. That's holy water stolen from Vatican archives. If they breach the car, a body slammed onto the hood. Celeste Mordrain smiled through the windshield, then punched straight through the glass. Thomas jerked the wheel. The car skidded, tires losing grip on loose gravel. They were going over. Alara felt the sickening tilt as the vehicle left the road, gravity becoming negotiable. Then impact, the world inverting, metal shrieking as they rolled once, twice. Silence. Smoke, blood in her mouth. Alara hung upside down in her seatbelt, head ringing. Thomas was unconscious, breathing but bleeding from a scalp wound. Through the shattered windows, she saw Celeste approaching with 4 others, unhurried. Predators who knew their prey was cornered. Come out, little scholar, Celeste sang. We'll make this quick. Turn you. Bind you to Mordrain. Break the pact. Easy. Alara's hand found the glove box, fingers closing around cold metal and glass. The dagger felt too light to matter. The holy water was barely a vial. Think, you're a researcher. Information is power. Her eyes fell on the pact documents scattered across the car's ceiling-turned floor. Pages had torn loose in the crash, revealing sections she'd only skimmed before. One passage caught her eye. Clause 12. The keeper, when acting in defense of the pact's integrity, may invoke the binding words to compel any vampire who has shed keeper blood to cease hostility. The words are, by blood spilled, by Catherine's oath, by the winter solstice witness, I bind you to stillness until sunset breaks. Alara's mind raced. Dominic had drunk from her. She'd shed blood willingly. But the clause said any vampire. Did that include... Celeste ripped the door off its hinges. No more delays. By blood spilled, Alara shouted, clutching the document. By Catherine's oath, by the winter solstice witness. Celeste froze mid-lunge, her face contorting with rage and shock. Around her, the other Mordrain vampires jerked to sudden stillness, as if invisible chains had snapped tight. I bind you to stillness until sunset breaks, Alara finished. The silence was absolute. Celeste stood like a statue, fury blazing in her eyes but her body completely immobile. The other vampires were equally frozen, caught mid-step or mid-reach. Alara scrambled from the wreckage, dagger in hand, careful not to touch the paralyzed vampires. The holy water she tucked into her jacket. Thomas groaned but didn't wake. Through the bond, she felt Dominic, injured, fighting, but alive. She pulled on that connection. I'm okay. I stopped them. Coming to you. His response was wordless relief mixed with astonishment. She found him a quarter-mile back, surrounded by ash piles and wounded but standing. 3 Mordrain vampires remained active, the ones who hadn't pursued the car. When they saw her approaching, they hissed. The Keeper has invoked binding magic, Alara announced, voice steadier than she felt. Your fellows are frozen until dawn. Leave now or face the same. The vampires looked at each other, then at Dominic, who watched Alara with something like awe. One by one, they retreated into the forest. When they were alone, Dominic crossed to her in 3 strides. How did you... Clause 12. She showed him the document. Apparently I can bind any vampire who's tasted keeper blood, which currently means you and, technically, me. But I didn't know if the magic would work on Mordrain vampires who've shed my blood through violence. She gestured back toward the crash site. Turns out intent doesn't matter. Blood is blood. You found a loophole in a 300-year-old magical contract, Dominic said slowly, while hanging upside down in a crashed car with hostile vampires attacking, and weaponized it on the spot. I'm a researcher, Alara said. Loopholes are my specialty. He laughed, genuine, delighted laughter that transformed his face. Then he pulled her close, and she felt his relief and pride through the bond like sunlight. You're extraordinary. I'm terrified and running on adrenaline, she corrected, but she didn't pull away. His coolness against her warmth felt right, balanced, that too. His hand cupped her face. But extraordinary first. You saved us, Alara. That binding won't hold past dawn, but it's enough. We can reach Armitage territory before they recover. What about Thomas? I'll carry him. But you... His thumb traced her cheekbone. You walk as my equal now. Not protected, not hidden. Partner. The word settled between them like a vow. Partners, she agreed. They retrieved Thomas, abandoned the ruined car, and walked the remaining miles through pine forests that smelled of sap and coming winter. Behind them, frozen vampires waited for dawn's release. Ahead, sanctuary. And between them, a bond that grew stronger with every step. When House Armitage's gates finally appeared through morning mist, Alara let herself believe they might actually survive this. Together. Chapter 7. The path between worlds trust is the bridge. Desire is the crossing House Armitage was everything Thornwood Keep was not. Modern, fortified, and full of vampires who viewed humans with the dispassionate interest of lions observing gazelles. Victoria Armitage herself, a striking woman with silver-white hair and eyes like black opals, greeted them in a parlor that mixed Louis XVI's furniture with surveillance monitors. Dominic. Ashford. Her voice was silk over steel. You invoke blood debt for a human girl? For the Keeper of Thornwood, he corrected. And for my partner. Victoria's eyebrows rose fractionally. She studied Alara with unsettling intensity. Show me the marks. Alara extended her wrist, displaying the twin punctures from when she'd offered blood in the vault. Victoria leaned close, inhaled. Fresh bond. Less than a week. And yet she invoked Clause 12 binding magic on Mordrain vampires? Her laugh was sharp. Either she's extraordinarily lucky, or Catherine's line bred true. Perhaps both. She's brilliant, Dominic said simply, and Mordrain wants her turned or dead to shatter the pact. So you bring a war to my doorstep. But Victoria's tone was more amused than angry. Fine, Dad acknowledged. You have sanctuary for 1 week while we negotiate with the Conclave. After that, you leave or you fight Mordrain yourself. Those are my terms. Accepted, Dominic said. Victoria's gaze returned to Alara. You, girl, walk with me, alone. Dominic tensed, but Alara touched his arm. It's fine. Through the bond, she felt his reluctance and acceptance. I'll be safe here. Victoria led her through corridors lined with portraits of stern vampires, to a greenhouse that smelled of earth and roses. Real roses, crimson blooms in the middle of November, thriving under artificial lights. Dominic loves you, Victoria said without preamble. Do you know that? Alara's breath caught. We barely know each other. He's known you for 3 years. Watched you work, read your research, saw your isolation and brilliance. Victoria deadheaded a fading bloom with precise fingers. Vampires don't form attachments lightly, girl. When we love, it's absolute. Consuming. Dangerous. He hasn't said, because he's terrified you'll choose mortality over him. Victoria turned, her ancient eyes knowing. The pact allows for voluntary transformation, did you know? Clause 19. If a keeper wishes to join House Ashford permanently, the guardian may turn them with both parties' consent. Dominic could offer you immortality, but that means asking you to give up sun, food, human aging, to become what hunts you. The weight of it stole Alara's breath. Why are you telling me this? Because you'll face the choice eventually, and you should know what you're choosing. Victoria's expression softened fractionally. I was human once, turned during the Crusades by a vampire I loved. 8 centuries later, he's dust, and I'm still here. Immortality is long, cold, and lonely. Make sure it's what you want before you accept it. Alara looked at the roses, at the careful cultivation required to make beauty survive in darkness. What if I don't want to choose? What if I want to find a third option? Then you're wiser than I was. Victoria smiled, showing a hint of fang, and more like Catherine than Dominic realizes. She rewrote the rules too, made vampires negotiate when they'd only known domination. She placed a single crimson rose in Alara's hand. Go, he's fretting. The bond makes separation uncomfortable for new pairs. Victoria was right. Alara felt Dominic's awareness spike as she left the greenhouse, drawn like a compass needle. She found him in the library, of course the library, surrounded by ancient texts and looking tense. What did she say? He asked immediately. That you watch me work. Alara set the rose on the table between them. For 3 years, apparently. Guilt flickered across his features. I should have told you. But how do you explain to someone that a vampire has been monitoring their research, waiting to see if they'd discover their own heritage? You could have approached me, explained, and said what? Hello, brilliant scholar who's being mocked by her peers. You're right about everything. Also, I'm a 300-year-old vampire bound to protect your bloodline. You would have thought me mad, fair point. Alara traced the rose's stem. Victoria said you could turn me. If I wanted. Clause 19. The silence was sharp enough to cut. Dominic's expression shuddered. Is that what you want? I don't know, she said honestly. Right now I want to survive. To stop Mordrain, protect the pact. But eventually, she met his eyes. Would you want me to? Become like you? That's not my choice to make. But if it were? He moved closer, the space between them electric. If it were my choice, I'd be selfish. I'd turn you tonight, bind you to me forever, never risk losing you to time or violence. But that would make me no better than Mordrain, taking your humanity without thought for what you want, what you'd sacrifice. His voice roughened. So no, I won't ask. You'll offer or you won't. And I'll accept your choice either way. What if my choice is you? The words escaped before caution could stop them. Not immortality, not the pact. Just You. His hand rose, fingers threading through her hair. Then you're a fool. I'm a monster, Alara. I've killed, fed on humans, existed for centuries as a predator. You deserve better than... She kissed him. It was impulsive, clumsy, and everything she'd never allowed herself in a life ruled by academic discipline. But Dominic responded instantly, pulling her closer, careful of his strength but undeniable in his need. He kissed like someone starving, like she was air after drowning, and she felt his centuries of loneliness through the bond, a void she somehow filled. When they broke apart, both breathless, her, and unnecessary, him, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Lucky for you, she said. I'm not asking for deserving. I'm asking for partnership, equal terms. No possession, no obligation, just us, for as long as we choose. His smile was sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Those are terms I can accept. The bond between them blazed, recognition and acceptance, and something that might, eventually, be called love. Outside, night deepened. Inside, possibility kindled, and in the shadows, Mordraine's patience wore thin. Chapter 8. The Breaking Veil. Some truths demand blood to speak. The week at House Armitage passed in a strange twilight existence. Days, Ilara researched the pact's deeper clauses with Victoria's extensive archives. Nights she trained with Dominic, not combat, but strategy, vampire politics, how to navigate a world that wanted her as either prey or pawn. And in between, there were stolen moments. His hand finding hers in the library, her falling asleep against his shoulder during long research sessions, conversations that stretched until dawn about philosophy and history and what it meant to exist across centuries. Tell me what you miss most, she asked one night, watching him study a chessboard they'd abandoned 3 moves in, about being human. Warmth, his answer was immediate. Not temperature, I don't feel cold, but human warmth. The way bodies radiate life, heartbeats, breathing, the small movements that signal aliveness. His gaze lifted to hers. Yours especially. I could spend eternity just listening to your pulse. Heat flooded her cheeks. That's intense. I'm a vampire in love with a human woman who weaponizes library research. His smile was crooked. Intensity is inevitable, in love. The words hung between them, acknowledged but not yet claimed. Victoria said, immortality is lonely. Ilara said carefully. Is that why you've stayed alone? No companions? No turned vampires in House Ashford? Dominic's expression darkened. I turned someone once, 1847, during Ireland's famine. A woman dying of fever. I thought I was showing mercy, offering her eternity instead of a pauper's grave. His hands clenched. But she hadn't consented, not truly. I took the choice from her. She went mad with grief, attacked me, forced me to end her existence. He met Ilara's eyes. I swore I'd never turn another soul without their clear, informed, enthusiastic consent. Not mercy, not love, not duty. Is that why you won't ask me? That's why I can't. He reached across the table, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. If you choose transformation, it has to come from you. Unpressured, certain, because unlike human choices, this one is permanent. Ilara placed her hand in his. What if I choose you but not immortality? If I want partnership as a human, then we have that. His thumb traced circles on her wrist over the faded bite marks. For as long as your life spans, and afterward, I'll honor your memory and try to remember how to be alone again. The sorrow in his voice broke something in her chest. Dominic, alarms shrieked. They were on their feet instantly, the chess game scattering. Victoria's voice crackled through intercoms. Mordraine at the gates. Full assault force. This is not a drill. Dominic swore in French. They called our bluff. We need to evacuate you. No. Ilara grabbed his arm. I'm not running anymore. We face this together. Or not at all. Ilara, they'll kill you. Or I'll bind them again. She was already moving toward the door. Toward the archives where she'd seen more pact documents. Clause 12 worked once. Maybe there are other clauses, other weapons in the contract. Give me 5 minutes. You don't have 5 minutes. Then protect me for 5 minutes. She whirled on him. You said I'm your partner. So trust me to do what I do best. Find the loophole, the forgotten clause, the thing everyone else missed. He stared at her, conflict warring across his features. Then, 5 minutes. I'll hold them at the gates. He kissed her, fierce, desperate, and was gone. Ilara ran to the archives, pulling packed documents with shaking hands. Mordraine was battering the gates. She could hear the impacts even deep in the house. Victoria's vampires were mobilizing, but Celeste had brought an army. Think. What did Catherine put in the contract that no one's used in 3 centuries? She spread pages across the table, searching for any clause that mentioned collective action, house conflicts, territorial disputes. Most were bureaucratic. Feeding schedules, dispute resolution, territory boundaries. Then she found it. Clause 23, written in faded ink at the document's end. In the event that hostile action against the Keeper threatens the Pact's integrity across multiple house territories, the Keeper may invoke the Conclave's judgment. The binding words are, "By blood and winter witness, I call the Conclave to trial. Let the accused face judgment for treaty violation. All vampires within hearing range are compelled to cease hostilities and await Conclave arbitration." Ilara's heart hammered. The Conclave, the governing body of vampire houses, hadn't been invoked in decades according to Victoria's texts. But if Mordraine was attacking under House Armitage's protection, they were violating treaty law. She could call them to trial, force a ceasefire. But it meant putting herself before the Conclave, essentially vampire court, and trusting ancient monsters to uphold their own laws. Outside, something exploded. The building shook. Ilara grabbed the document and ran. She found chaos in the entrance hall. Vampires fighting in blurs of motion, furniture shattered, Victoria bleeding black blood from a dozen wounds while holding off 3 Mordraine attackers. Dominic fought near the shattered doors, keeping Celeste at bay but clearly struggling. Ilara climbed onto the grand staircase, raising her voice above the carnage. "By blood and winter witness, I call the Conclave to trial." Every vampire froze. The compulsion was immediate and absolute. Even mid-strike, they stopped, turning toward her with expressions ranging from shock to rage. "Let the accused face judgment for treaty violation." Ilara finished, her voice ringing through the hall. "House Mordraine, you attacked the Keeper under protected sanctuary. You violated territorial law, treaty accord, and Conclave authority. I demand trial." Celeste's face contorted with fury. "You little—" "The Keeper has invoked ancient law," Victoria said, breathing hard but satisfied. "The Conclave must convene. Until they do, all hostilities cease by treaty magic's command." One by one, the Mordraine vampires lowered their weapons. The compulsion was too strong to resist. Celeste's eyes found Ilara's, promising death. "You've won nothing but delay. The Conclave will rule in our favor, and when they do, I'll personally tear out your throat. Then I'll see you at trial," Ilara said, surprised by her own steadiness. Dominic appeared at her side, blood-splattered but whole. Through the bond, she felt his pride and terror intermingled. That was either brilliant or suicidal. "Both," she admitted, legs suddenly shaking. "Definitely both." He caught her as her knees buckled, holding her steady. "You just did what no Keeper has done in 2 centuries. Forced the Conclave's hand. Will it work?" She looked up at him. "Will they uphold the law?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But you've given us a chance. And you've proven that the Pact's power belongs to you, not them." Mordraine vampires filed out under Victoria's watchful eye, leaving destruction, but no deaths. When the last one vanished into the night, Ilara finally let herself collapse against Dominic. "I need to sleep for a week," she mumbled against his chest. "You need to prepare for the Conclave." But his arms tightened around her, protective and proud. "But sleep first. I'll watch over you." "Always watching," she murmured, exhaustion pulling her under. "Always," he agreed. And in the wreckage of House Armitage, a new truth settled. Ilara Thorne was no longer prey. She was player. Chapter 9. The Crimson Verdict Justice wears many faces. Tonight, it bleeds the conclave convened in Edinburgh, in catacombs beneath the royal mile that predated the city itself. Alara descended stone steps worn smooth by centuries of supernatural feet, Dominic at her side, and Victoria leading them through passages marked with sigils that made her eyes water if she looked directly at them. The conclave is 7 elders. Victoria had briefed her during the drive, each representing a major European house. They'll hear testimony, review evidence, and render judgment. Their word is absolute, enforced by treaty magic itself. And if they rule against me? Alara had asked. Then Mordraine wins, the pact dissolves, and you die. Victoria's bluntness was almost refreshing, but you have law on your side. And Dominic's testimony carries weight. House Ashford is old, respected. Use that. Now they entered a circular chamber lit by hundreds of candles, their smoke rising toward a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations that shifted when Alara looked away. 7 figures sat in high-backed chairs around the room's perimeter, ancient vampires whose ages radiated like heat. The eldest, a skeletal man with skin like parchment, spoke first. The Keeper of Thornwood invokes trial. His voice rasped like wind through dead leaves. State your accusation. Alara stepped forward, forcing her voice steady. House Mordraine violated sanctuary law by attacking me under House Armitage's protection. They seek to shatter the Thornwood Pact through forced conversion, which violates Clause 8's consent requirements. I demand they be held accountable for treaty breach. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Celeste stood opposite, flanked by 2 Mordraine elders. The Keeper misrepresents, she said smoothly. We merely sought to renegotiate an outdated contract. The attack on Armitage was self-defense after Dominic Ashford ambushed our envoys. That's a lie, Dominic said coldly. Your forces sieged Thornwood Keep, attacked us on public roads, and breached Armitage territory with lethal intent. I have witnesses. As do we, Celeste countered. The Keeper used binding magic aggressively, imprisoned our members against their will. I used defensive magic, Alara interrupted, after you tried to kill me. The pact allows keepers to defend themselves. Clause 12 is clear. The skeletal elder raised a hand. Enough. We will review evidence. What followed was a surreal trial conducted in multiple languages, with testimony given by vampires Alara had never met. Victoria recounted the attack on her house. Thomas, surprisingly present and looking uncomfortable, described the road ambush. Dominic provided 3 centuries of context on the pact's importance. Then it was Alara's turn. You are young, said one conclave elder, a woman with silver eyes. 29 years. Do you truly understand what you protect? The Thornwood Pact limits our kind, restricts our hunting, forces negotiation. Some see it as inconvenient. I see it as civilization, Alara replied. The pact proves vampires can be more than predators. That consent and partnership are possible. If you dissolve it because it's inconvenient, you're saying the strong can simply take what they want. That might makes right. She met the elder's gaze. Is that what the conclave stands for? Silence. The elders exchanged glances. The girl speaks well, the skeletal elder said. But prettily worded arguments don't negate Mordraine's concerns. The pact is old. Perhaps renegotiation is warranted. Renegotiation requires both parties' consent, Dominic said. Forced conversion is not negotiation, it's conquest. And what would you offer instead, Keeper? The silver-eyed woman leaned forward. If we uphold the pact, what assurance do we have that it serves all houses fairly? That Ashford doesn't gain disproportionate power through your bloodline? Alara's mind raced. This was the real question, not guilt or innocence, but politics. Power distribution among vampire houses. I propose an expansion, she said suddenly. The idea formed as she spoke. The Thornwood Pact currently protects only my bloodline and grants exclusive partnership to House Ashford. What if we extended it? Create a framework where other houses could form similar partnerships with willing humans, based on consent, mutual benefit, regulated by conclave oversight. The chamber erupted in whispers. You would share your privilege? The skeletal elder asked, disbelieving. I would share the principle, Alara corrected. The pact proves coexistence works. Why limit it to one family, one house? Expand it, codify it into treaty law. Give humans agency in vampire politics, and give vampires legal alternatives to predation. She looked directly at Celeste. Unless Mordraine prefers hunting in shadows over negotiation in daylight? Celeste's face darkened, but she couldn't argue against the proposition without admitting her house valued violence over law. The conclave deliberated in languages Alara didn't know. Minutes stretched. Dominic's hand found hers, squeezed once, support and pride flowing through their bond. Finally, the skeletal elder spoke. The conclave finds House Mordraine guilty of treaty violation and sanctuary breach. Celeste Mordraine, you are stripped of territorial rights in Britain for 50 years. Further, we accept the Keeper's proposal. The Thornwood Pact becomes the foundation for a new covenant of consent, to be drafted within the year with Keeper assistance. Victory and terror hit simultaneously. Alara had won, but she'd also committed herself to rewriting vampire law with predators who could crush her without effort. Celeste's rage was palpable. This isn't over, Ashford. Neither you nor your precious Keeper will survive long enough to implement these pretty reforms. Was that a threat? Victoria asked mildly. Before the conclave? Celeste's jaw clenched. Without another word, she turned and stalked from the chamber, her followers trailing. When they were gone, Dominic pulled Alara close. You just changed vampire politics for the first time in 2 centuries, he murmured. Do you understand what you've done? Probably signed my death warrant, she said, suddenly exhausted. But at least it's for something that matters. It matters, he agreed. And I'll protect you while you build it, however long it takes. The conclave dismissed them. As they ascended toward Edinburgh's night streets, Alara felt the weight of her new role settling. Not just Keeper, but architect of a new order. Above them, stars wheeled through cold sky. Below, in darkness, possibility stirred. Chapter 10. The veil lifted. Some eternities are chosen. Some are claimed. 6 months later, Alara stood in Thornwood Keep's restored library, watching sunset paint the windows gold and crimson. The castle had become headquarters for the Covenant of Consent, a neutral ground where vampires and their human partners negotiated terms that would reshape supernatural politics across Europe. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and occasionally terrifying, but it was hers. The French delegation arrives tomorrow, Dominic said, entering with a leather portfolio. He'd become her co-architect, translating centuries of vampire law into frameworks humans could understand. Victoria's confirmed their safe passage. And Mordraine? Alara asked. Celeste had gone silent after the conclave's judgment, which made her more dangerous, not less. Quiet. Too quiet. Dominic set the portfolio down, concern flickering across his features. Which is why I want to discuss something we've been avoiding. Alara turned from the window. 6 months of partnership had made her fluent in his expressions. This was his I have something important to say but fear your response face. I'm listening. He crossed to her, taking both her hands. The covenant is working. We've established 3 new partnerships, drafted protections into treaty law, proven that consent-based relationships benefit both species. But you're still human, Alara, still vulnerable, and Mordraine won't forgive you for this. We've been careful. Careful isn't enough. His grip tightened. I wake every morning terrified that you won't, that some Mordraine assassin will find you when I'm not watching, that I'll lose you to something as simple as human mortality. He drew a shaky breath. I'm asking, not demanding. Never demanding, but asking if you've considered Clause 19. Transformation. Joining me in immortality. The question she'd known was coming since that first kiss at House Armitage. I have, Alara said quietly. I've thought about it constantly. The pros, staying with you, having time to complete the covenant, becoming harder to kill. The cons, losing sunlight, food, the experience of human aging, becoming predator instead of prey. And, his voice was barely a whisper, and I want to say yes. She watched relief and joy flood his expression, but on my terms, not because I'm afraid of dying, or because you're afraid of losing me, because I choose this, you, immortality, the work we're building, as an equal partner, always equal, he agreed fervently. I would never— I know. She cupped his face. That's why I'm saying yes. Because you've never tried to control me, never pushed, never treated me as anything less than partner. You make immortality look like freedom instead of a cage. His smile was incandescent. When? Tonight. The decision settled in her bones, certain and clear. Under the winter moon like Catherine did. Full circle. Are you sure? Even now he checked. This is permanent, Alara. No going back. I'm sure. She kissed him softly. Turn me, Dominic Ashford. Make me your eternal partner. They prepared in the castle's highest tower, where windows framed the moon's silver light. Dominic had explained the process with clinical precision. His venom would stop her heart, rewrite her cells, transform death into transformation. It would hurt. She would die in every way that mattered before waking to immortality. Last chance, he said as midnight approached. They stood facing each other, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I can stop. We can wait. No more waiting. Alara's voice was steady. I trust you, and I choose this. He kissed her then, tender and reverent, tasting of centuries and promise. When he pulled back, his eyes had gone fully crimson. I love you, he said. I should have said it sooner, but— I love you too, she interrupted. Now less talking, more immortality. His laugh was soft. He guided her to sit, then knelt beside her. It will be quick. When you wake, I'll be here. You'd better be. She offered her throat, heart hammering one last mortal rhythm. See you on the other side. His fangs pierced clean and sure. The pain was bright and brief, followed by cold spreading like ink through water. Alara felt her heart beat slow. 3 beats, 2, 1, then silence. Darkness rose like a tide, and in that darkness she wasn't afraid. She woke to everything, every sound amplified, wind through stones, mice in the walls, Dominic's unnecessary breathing beside her. Every scent separated into components, old paper, candle wax, his particular coldness. Her vision sharpened until she could count individual dust motes in moonlight. Easy, Dominic said, steadying her as she sat up too fast. Your senses need adjustment. Everything's overwhelming at first. Alara looked at her hands, paler now, but still hers. Still her, just more. I feel incredible. You look incredible. His smile was proud and relieved. How do you feel? Thirsty? Disoriented? Hungry? She admitted. The word didn't quite cover the ache in her jaw, the way her newly formed fangs pressed against her gums, but in control. Is that normal? Catherine's bloodline. Dominic offered his wrist. Strong-willed even in transformation. Here, first feeding should be from your sire. It's tradition. Alara took his wrist carefully, finding the instinct already present. Where to bite, how much pressure, when to stop. His blood tasted like winter nights and ancient vows, and through their bond, she felt his satisfaction at completing this final binding. When she pulled back, the marks healed instantly. We're really partners now, she said. Equals in every way. We always were, Dominic corrected. But now we have eternity to prove it. Epilogue. The Forgotten Pact. Remembered 1 year after Alara's transformation, Thornwood Keep hosted the first Covenant Summit. 30 vampire houses attended with their human partners, scholars, strategists, artists, all who'd chosen to bridge the veil between mortal and immortal. Alara stood before the assembly in the restored Great Hall, wearing crimson velvet that echoed her ancestor's portrait. Dominic stood at her side, not behind or before, equal placement. The Thornwood Pact began as one family's protection, Alara said, her voice carrying easily to every corner. It became a template for coexistence, proof that vampires and humans can be partners rather than predator and prey. Today, we formalize that template into lasting law, the Covenant of Consent. Applause rippled through the hall, vampires and humans together. Later, after the delegates departed and the castle quieted, Alara and Dominic walked the moonlit grounds. The winter garden bloomed impossibly with crimson roses, Victoria's gift, enchanted to grow year-round. Do you miss it? Dominic asked. Sunlight, human food, mortality? Sometimes, Alara admitted. But I don't regret choosing this. Choosing you. She leaned into his side. We're building something that matters. Something that will outlast both our original lifetimes. Catherine would be proud, he said softly. Her pact, forgotten for centuries, became the foundation for peace. Alara looked up at the castle. Her home, her headquarters, her legacy. Not forgotten, just waiting. Blood remembers, even when we forget. Above them, the moon illuminated ancient stones. Behind them, the castle glowed with warmth and light. And between them, a bond that would last centuries hummed with satisfaction. The blood veil of the forgotten pact had lifted, and in its place, partnership, immortality, and love without end.